I was standing in my kitchen on a Thursday afternoon, rinsing out a coffee mug I'd already forgotten to drink from, when my phone vibrated on the counter. It was an email from my boss's assistant. "Can you come to conference room C at 2:30? No explanation. Just that. By then, I'd learned not to rush. I dried my hands, straightened the stack of mail, and checked the time. 2:12 p.m. The house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator. Outside, a lawnmower started up somewhere down the block. When I walked into the office building 20 minutes later, the air conditioning felt colder than usual. Conference room C sat at the end of the hallway, glass walls, lights already on. 3 people were inside, seated on one side of the table. No one waved. I sat down across from them. The head of the table stayed empty. "We're going to need you to resign," one of them said calmly, like he was reading off a checklist. "Or we'll terminate your position today." I didn't answer right away. I folded my hands on the table and listened to the quiet hum of the overhead lights. Somewhere behind me, a printer clicked to life. That was the moment I realized they thought this was already decided. What they didn't know, what none of them knew yet, was that 4 days later, their lawyer would call me, confused, asking what I meant by one specific sentence. But that comes later. At the time, I was just a 46-year-old operations director who had worked at the same company for most of her adult life. My name is Laura Bennett. I'd been with Clearline Systems for just over 20 years, long enough to remember when the company fit on one floor, long enough to remember passwords no one else still used, long enough that people stopped asking how things worked and just assumed I'd handle it. That afternoon in conference room C, I listened while they explained politely that the company was moving in a new direction, that my role no longer aligned with their long-term vision, that I had 2 options: resign quietly and receive a small severance, or be terminated and receive nothing. They spoke evenly, no raised voices, no anger, just procedure. I nodded once. I told them I understood. I asked if I could have some time to think. They agreed. An hour. I stood, walked back to my office, and closed the door behind me. The room smelled faintly of paper and lemon cleaner. My desk was exactly the way I'd left it that morning. Family photo in the corner. A plant I kept forgetting to water. A yellow legal pad with 3 unfinished bullet points. I sat down slowly and opened my laptop. This wasn't the first time I'd thought about this moment. The company had been acquired earlier that spring by a global firm based out of Chicago. New leadership, new language, same smiles. I'd seen it happen before, to other people. So months earlier, I'd started keeping careful records. Nothing dramatic, just emails, contracts, old agreements, notes from meetings that felt slightly off at the time. I didn't do it out of anger. I did it out of habit. That afternoon, I opened a document I'd already written weeks earlier. It was short. 1 sentence. I read it once, then again. Then I closed the laptop, placed my phone face down on the desk, and waited until the minute hand reached 3:30. When it did, I stood up and walked back down the hallway. Conference room C was still lit. They were still inside, and none of them had read what I was about to hand over. I placed the paper on the table, nodded politely, and left without saying anything else. Then I went home, poured myself a glass of water, and waited. I didn't hear from anyone for the rest of that afternoon. My access badge still worked when I left. My email stayed active. No follow-up messages, no instructions, just silence. That wasn't unusual. Silence was how things worked now. Clearline had changed the spring it was acquired, not all at once. Quietly. Meetings got shorter, language got vaguer. People who used to explain things stopped doing that. Decisions appeared already made. I'd seen acquisitions before, just not from the inside. I joined Clearline in 2004, right out of college. Back then, the office smelled like burnt coffee and printer toner. We didn't have departments so much as clusters of desks. If something broke, you fixed it. If a client had a problem, you stayed late. Over time, I moved into operations, then oversight, then responsibility without a clean title. By my 40s, people stopped looping me in officially and just assumed I'd be there. That kind of familiarity feels like stability, until it doesn't. The acquisition was announced in early April, a cheerful town hall, New executives flown in, promises that nothing would change. I remember standing near the back, leaning against a column, listening to applause that felt slightly forced. That night, I updated my resume. I also started saving things. Emails where compensation was discussed too openly. Meeting notes where senior staff was used as shorthand for too expensive. Reorg drafts that quietly removed roles held by people over 40. I didn't forward anything. I didn't confront anyone. I just organized. By May, layoffs began. They called it optimization. 12 people gone in one morning. Most of them had been there longer than a decade. Their replacements arrived a month later, eager and confused, paid half as much. I stayed where I was. In June, I stopped getting invited to meetings I'd run for years. When I asked why, the answer was always casual. Just trying something new. Fresh voices. Streamlining. In July, a project I'd overseen since its creation was reassigned to someone half my age. He was polite. He asked questions I'd answered 100 times before. I answered them anyway. My performance reviews stayed spotless. That mattered. I made sure it stayed that way. By August, the shift became more obvious. A meeting scheduled late on a Friday. A conversation about realigning compensation. A new role suggested that looked exactly like my job with a different title and a much smaller number attached. I didn't react. I thanked them and said I'd consider it. That evening, I made a phone call I'd been meaning to make for weeks. Her name was Diane Keller, employment attorney, someone a former colleague had used years earlier. Calm voice, direct questions, no drama. I told her everything, slowly, in order. She didn't interrupt. When I finished, she paused for a moment and said, "They're trying to make you leave voluntarily." "I know," I said. "Good," she replied. "Then you also know not to make this easy for them." From that point on, I followed rules instead of instincts. Rule 1, document everything. Rule 2, don't explain yourself. Rule 3, let them move first. So when I walked into conference room C weeks later and heard the word resign, I wasn't surprised. I was prepared. That one-sentence letter wasn't emotional. It wasn't clever. It didn't accuse or threaten. It was precise, conditional, quiet. When I handed it over, I watched their eyes skim instead of read. That night, I didn't celebrate. I didn't call anyone. I ate a simple dinner, washed the dishes, and set my phone on the counter. Then I waited. Because when people think something is finished, they stop being careful. And 4 days later, at 10:17 on a Tuesday morning, my phone rang. Unknown number. Local area code. I let it ring twice before answering. Laura Bennett speaking. There was a brief pause on the other end. "Ms. Bennett," a man said carefully, "this is counsel for Clearline's parent company. We need to talk about your resignation letter." I sat down at the kitchen table. "Yes," I said. "I thought you might." The lawyer introduced himself slowly, like he was choosing each word. He said there was some uncertainty around the timing of my resignation. He asked what I meant by one specific phrase. His tone was polite, professional, and slightly tight, the way people sound when they're already looking at a problem on their desk. I didn't rush to answer. I turned my mug so the handle faced away from me. I glanced at the window. Morning light, steady, no clouds. Then I opened my laptop. "My resignation," I said evenly, "becomes effective once full settlement of all compensation and benefits owed to me is received." There was a pause. "I'm sorry," he said. "Can you clarify that?" "Of course," I replied. "Until that settlement happens, I remain an employee." Another pause. Longer this time. I could hear paper shifting on his end, someone else breathing in the background. He asked what I believed the company owed me. I didn't argue. I didn't speculate. I read. Base salary through separation date. Accrued vacation hours. Outstanding reimbursements. I gave exact figures, rounded to the cent. He thanked me and said he'd review the file. "That's only part of it," I added gently. Silence. I continued. My employment agreement included a performance bonus clause payable upon termination. My targets had been met, documented, signed off. The amount was significant. Then there were my equity grants, a change of control provision I'd flagged months earlier. Vesting triggered by the acquisition. The valuation was current. I'd already done the math. The line went quiet. Finally, he asked me to repeat the total. I did. He exhaled, slow and controlled. That number seems higher than expected, he said. I understand, I replied. It surprised them too. He said they would dispute it. That's fine, I said. In the meantime, I remain employed. Another pause. Ms. Bennett, he said, this interpretation is standard, I finished calmly, and reviewed by counsel. I didn't name Diane yet. I didn't need to. He said they'd call back. When the line disconnected, I didn't move right away. I closed the laptop and sat still. That was important. Stillness makes things real. 20 minutes later, my work email reactivated. An hour after that, my building access was restored. By mid-afternoon, an internal email chain appeared in my inbox. It hadn't been meant for me. Someone in IT had made a mistake. No one noticed until it was too late. 5 lawyers, 3 executives, subject line marked urgent. They were discussing my letter, not debating it, confirming it. One message stood out. Short, direct. Conditional resignation accepted without review. Exposure is real. I didn't forward it. I didn't respond. I saved it. At 4:40 p.m., my phone rang again. This time I recognized the number. The CFO spoke fast, frustrated, emotional. You knew what you were doing, she said. I knew what I signed, I replied. You can't hold the company hostage. I'm not, I said. I'm employed. She raised her voice. I didn't. I told her my daily salary rate, my benefits, the interest accruing. I spoke like I was reading weather data. She stopped talking. I placed the phone face down. Then I stood up, rinsed my mug, and wiped the counter. Step 1 was complete. They now understood the rules. And once rules are clear, everything else becomes math. That evening, I didn't open my email again. I cooked a simple dinner, ate at the counter, and washed the pan right away. Order helps me think. Afterward, I sat down with a legal pad and wrote 3 lines. Step 1, stay silent unless asked. Step 2, respond only in writing or with records. Step 3, let time work. I slept well. By the next morning, messages started coming in. HR first, then legal. Polite, careful. Each one asking for clarification, each one phrased as if this were a misunderstanding that could be smoothed out quickly. I answered once. I attached my employment agreement, highlighted the sections that mattered, included a spreadsheet, tabs labeled, dates clean, no commentary. Then I stopped. Silence wasn't avoidance, it was structure. Around noon, Diane called. I put her on speaker and took notes while she talked. They're trying to reset the frame, she said. Don't let them. I won't, I replied. Good. Next time they call, ask for everything in writing. That afternoon, legal sent a proposed settlement number, lower than what was owed, framed as generous, time limited. I didn't counter. I waited. At 3:17 p.m., another email arrived. Slightly higher. New tone. Still wrong. I replied with one sentence. Please see attached calculation based on Section 7.2 and change of control provisions. Nothing else. An hour later, the call came. This time, the lawyer's voice was different, slower, measured. He asked if I understood the company's position. I do, I said. He said litigation would be expensive. I'm aware, I replied. He mentioned reputational concerns. I've been quiet, I said. That landed. Then I told him the rules I was following. I'm not negotiating emotions, I said. Only contracts, only numbers. I listed them again. Calmly, line by line, salary, bonus, equity, severance, interest. He asked for time. Of course, I said. I remain employed. That phrase had weight now. 2 days passed. My paycheck deposited as usual. Benefits stayed active. My title remained unchanged in the system. They were paying me to wait. On the 3rd day, Diane forwarded me an internal note from another client. Similar situation, same outcome. It helped confirm the pattern. Late that afternoon, I received a calendar invite. Settlement discussion. No location. Just a time. I accepted it. Before the call, I reviewed my documents once more. Not because I needed to, but because repetition builds calm. When the meeting began, there were more voices on the line, fewer interruptions. Someone took notes. They offered a number closer to the real one. I listened. I didn't respond right away. "Please send it in writing," I said, with a breakdown. They agreed. After we disconnected, I closed my laptop and stood up. Outside, the sun was low. The street was quiet. Someone walked a dog past my window. Everything was moving, just not loudly. That's when I knew this wasn't about winning. It was about finishing something correctly, and I was willing to wait. The call was scheduled for 2 p.m. on a Wednesday. I joined 2 minutes early and muted my line. My notebook was open, pen uncapped, documents stacked neatly to my left. The house was quiet. I could hear the clock in the hallway ticking. 4 voices joined, then a 5th. The lead attorney spoke first. Formal, courteous. He thanked everyone for their time. He framed the conversation as an effort to resolve outstanding issues efficiently. I didn't interrupt. They walked through their revised offer. It was closer now. Still not correct, but close enough to show they'd finally read the contract instead of skimming it. When they finished, there was a pause. "Laura," the attorney said, "we believe this is a fair resolution given the circumstances." I waited a full breath before speaking. "I'm going to respond in steps," I said. No one objected. "Step 1, I continued. We agree on the facts, my role, my tenure, the acquisition date, the contract terms." Silence. Then a quiet acknowledgement. "Step 2, I said. We apply those facts exactly as written, not creatively, not generously, just accurately. I referenced the clauses, page numbers, dates, trigger events. I didn't explain why they mattered. I just stated that they did. Step 3, I said, we total the amounts owed, including interest, including benefits continuation. I gave the number again. This time, no one reacted immediately. Then the CFO spoke. Her voice was tight. "You're being unreasonable." I didn't respond to that. The attorney cleared his throat. "Let's keep this professional." I stayed quiet. The COO jumped in, defensive. He said something about intent, about how this wasn't supposed to happen this way. "That may be true," I said calmly, "but intent isn't part of the calculation." That ended that line of argument. The attorney asked what I wanted to move forward. "I want what the contract states," I said. "Paid within 15 business days, with a written reference and mutual non-disparagement." "And if we don't agree?" he asked. "Then nothing changes," I replied. "I remain employed. Salary continues, benefits continue, interest accrues. No threats, just structure." Someone muted themselves without meaning to. I could hear muffled voices in the background, quick, urgent. After a moment, the attorney came back on. "We'll need to confer internally," he said. "I understand," I replied. The call ended. I didn't move for a moment. I closed my notebook, capped the pen, and placed both in the drawer. Then I stood up and opened the window. Cool air. Late afternoon. A car passed slowly. I felt steady. This wasn't confrontation the way movies show it. No raised voices, no dramatic exits, just a table, a contract, and time. They called back 2 hours later. Their tone had changed. When the phone rang again, it was just after 5. Same attorney, same number, different pace. "Ms. Bennett," he said, "thank you for your patience." I sat down at the table and listened. They accepted the core calculation, not enthusiastically, not graciously, but clearly. The bonus, the equity, the severance window tied to the acquisition, the interest. What remained were details, payment timing, method, language. I didn't interrupt. I let him finish. Then I responded slowly, point by point. Wire transfer, not check. 15 business days. Itemized breakdown attached to the agreement. A signed letter of recommendation on company letterhead. Mutual non-disparagement. Confidentiality limited to the settlement terms only. No open-ended clauses. No future restrictions on my work. There was a pause while he wrote. "That's acceptable," he said finally. I asked him to read the number back to me. He did. It was correct. "I'll have counsel send the draft this evening," he said. "Please do," I replied. When the call ended, I didn't feel relief. Not yet. Relief comes after confirmation. The agreement arrived that night, 40-plus pages, standard language padded with caution. Diane and I reviewed it line by line the next morning. She marked 3 sections. I flagged 2 more. We sent it back with revisions. They accepted all of them. The wire hit my account 9 days later, mid-afternoon. I was folding laundry when my phone buzzed. I checked once, then again. The number was exactly right. An hour after that, a courier arrived. A heavy envelope. Inside was a signed letter on company letterhead, formal, polished, complimentary. It described my work as foundational and my tenure as exceptional. I set it aside without reading it twice. That evening, I signed the final page of the agreement, scanned it, sent it back. At 2:18 p.m. the following day, I received confirmation. My resignation was now effective, not before, now. I closed my laptop. The company was finished with me, and I was finished with it. There was no celebration, no phone calls, no announcement. I took a walk around the block. Leaves were starting to turn. Someone was watering their lawn. A dog barked once, then stopped. Everything felt orderly. Consequences had happened, not loudly, but precisely, and that was enough. The morning after everything finalized, I woke up at my usual time out of habit. No calendar alerts, no inbox to check, just quiet. I made tea instead of coffee and stood by the sink while the kettle cooled. Outside, the street looked the same as it always had. A delivery truck idled for a minute, then pulled away. Someone across the way opened their garage and paused, like they were deciding whether to go back inside. I sat at the table and sorted a small stack of papers I'd been meaning to organize for years. Old warranties, instruction manuals, things that belonged in labeled folders instead of drawers. Later I cleaned out a closet. Not everything, just enough to make space. In the weeks that followed, a few former coworkers reached out. Quiet messages, careful questions. They didn't ask for details. They asked how I stayed calm, how I knew what mattered, how I didn't panic when things turned uncomfortable. I told them the same thing every time. Read what you sign, save what you earn, and don't rush when someone wants you to. One afternoon, a friend of a friend called. Similar situation, different company, same pressure. I listened, I didn't interrupt. When she finished, there was a long pause. "Can you look at something for me?" she asked. I said yes, not because I wanted to relive anything, but because some patterns are easier to see once you've stepped outside them. Now my days are quieter. I consult occasionally. Short projects, clear terms, everything in writing. I end my workdays by closing the laptop and putting it away. No lingering tabs, no open loops. And sometimes, in the late afternoon, I take a walk with no destination, just around the block, just far enough to reset the day. That feels like ownership. If you stayed with me through this story, thank you. If it reminded you of something you're dealing with, you're not alone. Before you go, take a second to like the video and subscribe if this kind of calm, real storytelling helps you unwind. Let me know in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is right now where you are. I always like seeing how far these stories travel. 2 of the most listened to stories will be queued up next, right here, whenever you're ready. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you soon.